Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here, and in this episode I spoke with, I'm not going to say her first name. She prefers to be known by her blog name, which is A Pilot, and I think hopefully as I went through the listening and the editing, I removed all the references of her first name because I called her by her first name throughout the episode. But anyway, she grew up in a supremely strict religious family, and she suffered sexual abuse, and she is coming out the other side. She's remembering things and growing and healing, and she's a writer, and she's an exceptional massage therapist, which is how she and I met actually a few years back. It's a really good conversation. It's an important conversation. We got together and we talked in my kitchen on September 5th. So what's really crazy about this conversation is that given what's going on in the world right now, going on in America right now with politics and all the stuff, the crazy political scene, and talk of sexual abuse and what happens to women and how they report it or don't report it, what goes on in families, what goes on with friends, what goes on in parties, what happens with strangers. That's not the whole of this conversation between A Pilot and myself. However, it is certainly running throughout the conversation. Trigger warning: if this kind of subject matter is a trigger for you, perhaps it's best to skip over this episode. I just want to put that out there. So I don't want to cause any undue stress or harm to anyone out there listening. As always, little housekeeping, heyhumanpodcast.com. I will have links and information regarding this episode, how to find A Pilot on her blog, and information about getting help if you are being abused or someone you know is being abused. As well as, it wasn't super heavy the whole time. We talked about fun stuff. There was humor and lightheartedness as well, as is life. Life goes from light to dark all the time to light again, we hope. There's stuff on the podcast, on the website about that, and just about all the things we talked about. And also, Instagram, Hey Human Podcast, and Facebook.com/Hey Human Podcast. And on iTunes, I've got the Hey Human Podcast on iTunes. It's under Hey Human. If you're going to search it, that's where it hangs out. And if you go there, please give a review and subscribe. Super helpful. Really wonderful if you can do that. Thank you so much for listening. Tongue twister. I really appreciate that y'all are, that you're hanging in there and you're telling your friends and your family and everybody about it. And it's cool. I'm really happy to be doing this. I'm feeling very in my head right now, just after re-listening to this episode and absorbing everything. Anyway, I hope it means to you as much as it meant to me to be able to have this conversation. And I hope while you're listening, it does whatever it's supposed to do. Yeah. So, Hey Human Podcast, episode 18. Here we go.
Hi, Susan.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for being on Hey Human. Yay!
Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. So, you and I knew each other, several years ago. And then we just, life got insane and whatever. And you crossed my mind one morning, or I can't even remember I think I told you, I was like, I wonder what she's up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you just reached out.
Yeah, and we had a great lunch, and anyway, and so we started talking at lunch that day, just about your upbringing and your life, and it was so interesting. I thought, hey, maybe you'd like to be on. hey, human, and here you are.
Yes.
Because you're a human, and hey,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay.
So,
Nice to be deemed interesting as well.
yes, interesting is good. So you came from a very strict religious background, is that correct?
I would call it Christian fundamentalism.
Okay.
You know,
well, what does that mean exactly? I feel like there's so many of the different kinds.
And there truly are. And I'm sure there are some that are more extreme than what I grew up in.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really confining and frustrating and hard to get out of.
Yeah.
Partially because my family members were in the leadership. So, you know, it was definitely the way we lived our life. It revolved around church and whatever was happening at church.
So when you say it was, you know, choking, or what was your usual day in the life of you as a kid?
Okay, well, I would just say that the environment was strictly controlled in the sense that so we went to private schools. We didn't go to public schools. I mean, I guess kindergarten, first grade, I was in public school, but after that, you know, we were privately schooled, which just basically kept the same dialogue that you hear at church.
So it was a
at
church school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
Not
homeschool,
affiliated
or?
with, no, not a homeschool.
Oh, okay.
And not affiliated with necessarily one particular church. Usually like a loose association of conservative Baptists or something like that, you know. But I guess the basic tenets is that the Bible is literally true, you know, and the literal creation story where it literally took God 7 days to create the world, and that the earth is between 6,000 and 10,000 years old, and we reject evolution, and you know,
and women aren't worthy. And...
Well, I mean, they won't say that, but that is the effect of it for sure. Because, you know, the New Testament, which is supposed to be where the freedom is, you know, women should be silent in church. You know, that's still in there. So it was definitely the idea, you know, that women couldn't teach men, women could not be preachers. You know, they could be Sunday school teachers, but if they were teaching men, then
they have those little brains. The women do.
Well,
those tiny little brains. What could you do with that except for have a baby and cook some food?
Right. Seriously. But they would literally say that, like, a man just won't follow a woman's leadership. They would say that, you know. Yeah. And so, anyway, that used to frustrate me. I would fight in English class over the so-called neutered pronoun that was he, you know. And I'm like, that's not neutered. That's male.
Well, so, I don't understand.
Like if you're speaking in English and it's like an unidentified human, when I was in school, it was technically correct to say he.
No matter what.
No matter what. Now it's they accept they or whatever, but you know,
or he / she. Or
right.
Yeah.
It's much more interchangeable, but not then. And so I just remember that I felt like I was fighting for so much when I would challenge that rule, you know, and just. But the whole world was definitely patriarchal.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly.
How many children in your family?
We were small. You know, we weren't not like the Quiverful movement where you don't do birth control and you have as many kids as possible. It wasn't like that. I only have one sibling, an older brother.
A brother, okay. So was he considered more worthy then because a boy, or?
I honestly don't think that my mom and dad viewed it that way. Again, it was just it was like an institutionalized belief that men were somehow inherently
better.
Yeah, because like for instance, my mom would teach this class called Supermom, and I see some of her notes sometimes, and it's got like this little pyramid, you know, with God at the top, my husband next, my children, and then my church, and then somewhere in there is the woman herself. You know what I mean? Like, that was literally the breakdown of how it was taught. So when I say, I don't think they wouldn't say that women weren't worthy enough. It was just like that was our God-ordained role.
The tenet. Did the women seem okay with this in your group?
I think everyone tried, like, everyone to be a godly woman. Like, that's what you were supposed to be. And so everybody was just trying to do that. But I think it chafed a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how did that place you in the family unit? If your father and brother were the dudes of the house, how did you, especially if you were acting up?
Well, yeah, this is where it gets strange to talk about. Because, like, at home, I don't feel like I don't feel like that overt dynamic was there. It's just the mindset that I grew up in.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was a prevailing, pervasive idea that I felt bound by.
Sure.
Whether or not it broke down that way inside my house, I don't know. Other than that, Dad was definitely like the final word on everything,
Yeah.
But no.
And your grandparents lived nearby?
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a Mason-Dixon line thing. They were in Arkansas, we were in Pennsylvania. So,
Oh, okay.
But we would go visit,
Yeah.
They were definitely in our lives.
Sure.
As children, especially.
Yeah.
So.
So you described to me at lunch that it was cult-like. What?
Yeah.
How do you mean by that? Because,
Well,
there's a big difference between a cult and just church people that are super churchy,
Right. Right. Well, that's why I said cult-like, because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not like there wasn't like Kool-Aid that we all drank and like
Yeah.
certain rituals that we did, but
Other than the usual.
right, exactly, like
Those are all rituals.
communion and
Yeah,
whatever, and
sure.
the whole order of service. Yeah.
Sure.
I think because I would go to private school that had the same belief system as my church did, then my entire worldview was just homogenized, and in deep Christian fundamentalism, I feel like it has a terrible dampening effect on creativity, because you're not, even though they say you can ask questions, you're not really allowed to ask questions. Like there's only like a few acceptable answers, and so if you don't come in line with those things, then there is ostracizing. You know what I mean? Like it's not comfortable to be in it if you're not complying.
Were you ostracized when you would? Because you're a writer.
Well, I've tried to be, but I at that point in time in my life, I felt like I had no possession of my voice at all. Like I don't feel like that's anything that I've come into until I've been out and on my own. Like I haven't lived at home for 20 years now, and it's taken me 20 years really to get all of that programming out of my head and think for myself and think that it's okay.
What was the first step in that, you think?
Honestly, I lost my mother to.
Sorry.
That's okay. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago. In some weird way, I feel like it set me free. And I say that because I don't know that I could ever have walked away from the faith if she were still alive, because I would have. It was almost like my loyalty was to her. Mm-hmm. And I tried to believe correctly because of my mom more than anything, because she really tried hard to be a godly woman and do all of these things, and I didn't want to disappoint her.
Did you ever voice your
Sure.
to her, or your confusion, or your disinterest, or your
More to my dad.
Oh, okay.
It
Went
got
straight to the man, huh?
Right. I was pretty confrontational with him, actually. Through I think when I started hitting 11 or 12, we just butt heads a lot, and I would challenge him on music. Like technically we really weren't supposed to listen to secular radio, and even some Christian music was like deemed too worldly, or like it had too much of a beat or sounded too much like rock and roll.
Is that because that sexualized it?
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah, you might dance, and if you dance, oh no.
Yeah, interesting.
What
are they? I'm always curious about religions that aren't into the music and the dancing, when there's both music and dancing in the Bible. How do they make amends for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, because we would talk about, youth group, that stuff would come up, and the answer was usually something like, well, it was a celebration amongst God's people, and it was holy dancing, and we don't, like, it doesn't exist now or something. I don't know.
It wasn't a booty shake.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be like that.
Yeah, right.
It was all about adoring God and
Okay.
expressing adulation somehow with your body. That was,
Adulating, not undulating.
Ooh, there you go.
I got it. I'm going to make that t-shirt. Okay.
I'll buy it.
So what did your dad say when you would confront him?
We would just go round and round. Of course, he would deliver biblical texts and verses and whatever, and it was just I was really just confronting him on purpose. I was just mad and kind of taking it out on him, to tell you the truth, but which he did listen to. I'll give him credit. He let me do that. But
was your brother like that at all?
He
Or
actually...
Did he toe the line, or did he...
I don't know how to say this. I mean, my parents did encourage an independent spirit in us in some ways, you know. My brother was actually ordained to be a minister for a while and didn't wind up doing that. But I think we were both, as long as we were under the roof, like, we were both really trying to
toe the line.
Mm-hmm.
Are you friendly with your brother now?
Not at this moment. There's been difficulties in life that have come up. So
why? From the church?
Somewhat. I mean, it's definitely related. That is a topic that is certainly our family drama, and not something I will share. On this. But it's
there's always
unfortunate.
family drama,
right?
Yeah.
He and I were very close for a very long time, and I miss him. But
was he supportive when you said, "This isn't for me"?
Well, he kind of did that too. It was almost like he became the black sheep first. You know, he's 3 years older than me, so he was out of the house before I was. When he got out on his own in college, I think he did quite a bit of, like, woohoo, and just kind of exploring and whatever.
Rumspringer.
Yeah, exactly. When I found out about that, I was like, holy crap, like, I didn't know that Amish had more choices than I did, you know what I mean? Because, like, I respect Rumspringer. I do. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, though, of course, in that situation, a lot of the kids go totally insane.
Right.
Because they haven't been allowed to
do
experience
anything.
life. And, but, some of them do find their way back, which I suppose is the ultimate hope.
Right.
It's interesting.
It is, yeah.
So your mother passes away, and you had, like an aha moment, or what?
It was more just like a freedom to leave, And
how are you able, wait. For me, I'm thinking, you just don't go to church. It sounds like it's more complicated than that. So why is it more complicated?
Because my father's the preacher, so it's a total defiance of him. And
it's like Footloose.
If you're living under his roof, then there are certain things you're expected to do.
But you weren't living there.
I was at the time.
Oh, okay. So your mom passed away while you're still home.
I had gone away to 2 years of college, and then I came home for a summer not knowing what to do. Like not wanting to. Didn't know what to declare as a major, and didn't want to keep paying for classes if they weren't going to get me where I was going, but I didn't know where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And so it wound up being the last 2 years that she was alive that I was home. So I just lived at home and worked full time and got to spend time with her, which I'm glad for.
Yeah. How did she pass?
Breast cancer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people. Yeah, for sure.
Cancer's stupid.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bully. Brutal.
Yeah. So your mom dies, and
so I just left. So I moved here to Nashville.
Did you say I'm out of the church, or did you say pack your bags and leave in the middle of the night, or what did you do?
The plan was to go back to school. So I came to Belmont and went to school for a year and continued working, and then I've just been here ever since, kind of evolving and figuring it out on my own. Yeah.
So did you ever drop the bomb on your dad and say I'm not in the church anymore? Or did he just figure it out?
I mean, he kind of figured it out over time. It wasn't like he called every week and was like, "Are you going to church?" But he did. Anytime we talked, yes. Are you going to church?
Yeah,
it was always there.
How did you feel about you going to Belmont, which is a religious affiliated school, but not of the same religion?
It was at the time.
Oh, really?
At the time, it was still a Southern Baptist school. Can you believe that? And they were literally voting on that issue while I was there.
Okay.
And I think the next year or two, they separated from the Southern Baptist Convention and just became whatever they are now, loosely something.
Loosely affiliated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did your dad take that?
Well, he was disappointed.
Yeah.
Like.
So what was your spiritual awakening, or what was the aha moment? What was to take that? Sorry, Oprah. It's a good way to put it, though.
Right? Was there a particular moment? I think it was just a progression, of having a freedom to explore. So I go to school, I meet a whole bunch of new people, and all of a sudden I'm hearing music that I've never listened to before. I'm reading books that I've never read before. You know what I mean? So I'm absorbing pop culture that I totally missed, which isn't totally pop. You know what I mean? Like, there's great stories and concepts, and I think the first belief that I really started letting go of was the creation story, like the literal creation story. I think that was when everything in me started to shift, when I was able to go, you know what? I am going to accept evolution.
Was it something that someone had said to you? Did you read something?
It was a lot of things,
yeah. Okay,
And I did have a couple of friends who were like scientists and were just like blown away because they're like, you're pretty intelligent, but I can't believe that you reject evolution and all the weight of scientific evidence. And they just kind of kept hammering at me.
Well, intellect really doesn't. I don't think intellect has anything to do with it. I think very, very bright people think
it's true
that creation is the end all be all.
Right.
I think it, like you said, it's all you had ever known.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do think that like really strict adherence to fundamentalism does affect intellect because I really do. I mean, I feel like I've gotten smarter as I've allowed myself to accept the larger world,
Sure.
And maybe it's just that my world has gotten bigger, but I feel like
you were probably always that smart. I would hypothesize that you always had the intellect, but you were limited. It's sort of like the foot binding thing.
Yeah.
If you start binding a child's foot, but you unbind it before the foot is fully grown, perhaps the foot's going to grow some more.
Yeah.
So
that's a good analogy.
Thanks. That's the first thing that popped in my head was foot binding.
It works. Yeah. I would say that I had intellectual binding.
So, did you say, Dad, guess what? I don't believe in creation.
Yeah, kind of.
And boy, how do you take that?
I
imagine
a little bit of debate back and forth, and then there's a whole lot of guilt delivered. Just that was his main weapon, that when he had exhausted his intellectual, justifications, and I was just like, nope. And then it was just, well, this isn't how you were raised, and you know what's right, and that kind of thing,
Wow. So first came that, then what? Did you get to see a Seinfeld and a Buffy episode? Did you read Harry Potter? And I feel like you missed all that stuff, right?
Well, and here's another dichotomy. Like, my upbringing is full of a bunch of dichotomies. Some kids that I went to school with were not allowed to go see movies. However, there was a loophole where they could rent them and bring them home, which I never understood any of it. It's like if you go to the theater, people don't know what you're going to see. So it could be rated R, and it could be a stumbling block to them if they see you going in.
By a stumbling block, meaning everything leads to sex.
Yes,
is that what
pretty
the
much.
Stumbling block?
I think that. I mean, that really did seem to be.
You might get a hand job in the bathroom, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening right now?"
Or
I was just seeing Harry Potter. I don't know what's going on right now.
You might learn what a hand job is. That they even exist. Yeah.
Well, wait, did your parents not talk to you about sex when you were growing up?
They did some, but again, very, very limited.
Okay.
And always only ever supposed to be with your spouse, and only one partner your whole life, and whatever. Wait till marriage, purity, all of that.
I'm curious, was there a lot of abuse in the community?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that fundamentalism breeds a lot of abuse because
not just
because
it's like everything.
Mental,
physical, sexual, like the whole
emotional,
9 yards.
all of it. I completely agree with that.
Yeah,
absolutely, because it's very coercive. It's a very small world, so you're always trying to corral people into stay in this small thing.
It's very bizarre to me to think that on one hand, someone's saying you can only have, let's just say sex. You can only have sex, husband and wife. That's it for your whole life, and yet they're abusing their children sexually, or they believe in the tenets of Jesus, and yet they're beating their kids or their wives, or I know that husbands get beaten as well, so I'm not going to leave them out. But do you know what I mean? Like, that part, it's very hard to reconcile any of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why people get very frustrated with extremists, because most of them don't live it at home the way that they preach it to everybody else.
The people that are screaming the loudest are the ones I worry the most about.
Exactly.
To be honest, they freak me out the most.
As they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got to the movie theater, and then I lost the train. We went off in a different direction. So
that's okay.
You're in college. You said, okay, wait, something's not right. Now, a spiritual awakening, to me, that sounds like you start taking on you started looking at other religions, perhaps,
Sure.
and other doctrines and all that? Was there anything that particularly spoke to you, or is it all encompassing now?
Well,
it's a complicated question, I suppose.
it is, yeah, and I haven't broken it down in my head for a long time, so it's hard to know exactly where things started, I think I just started living my life, and the experiences I started having were not in line with what I was told was how things worked. For example, okay. So I meet a guy that I fall in love with, and I wind up marrying him a few years down the line. But, we had a sexual relationship before we were married. And, right? And so my brain is telling me, okay, so this is sin and this is wrong.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
That's a bummer.
But I wasn't experiencing it that way. Like, for me, it was healthy and it was healing, and it was like I'd always had trouble with my femininity too, to a ridiculous degree, and it was making me feel comfortable as a woman for the first time in a lot of ways, and so I recognized that I was healing when I was being told that I was doing something damaging. And so
wait, so I'm sorry. So you're in a relationship with a man. You're a sexual relationship, and someone else, not the man, but someone else is telling you that it's
just my
your
brain,
mind, your upbringing.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if somebody actually was.
And anytime I didn't hide that relationship from my father, so
okay.
So yeah, he would challenge that.
Okay.
And,
got it.
Mm-hmm. But it's in your brain. Like I've described it as being kind of written on the inside of my bones. Like that's how it feels to me. Like when I first started.
That's beautiful, actually.
And terrible.
Yeah, but yes. Well,
but
tragedy is often beautiful in its own weirdly unique way.
That is very true.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and as I started kind of changing my mind on some things, I do remember like having a few moments of real fear, like guttural fear that like the earth might just open up and swallow me in fire because I was being a heretic, like it was hard to give myself the permission to, believe based on my own lived experience instead of my indoctrination.
Was it a healthy sexual relationship? Did you feel free enough to, orgasm and like be in it? Well, that's good.
Thankfully, yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I assumed he knew about your child, like your upbringing, sure. And so it was. That's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Poor guy. He's, I still wasn't ready, and poor whatever. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good in it.
Yes, of course. So you were with him for how long?
It was 10 years altogether.
Oh my goodness.
And everything. Mm-hmm.
That's a long time.
Not married, but yeah,
Hussy. Okay. 10 years is a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you the breaker-upper?
I caused it.
How so? Were you cheater?
I did cheat on him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he divorced me, and I agree with him, He should have. So,
why did you cheat?
I fell in love with a woman, which totally surprised me.
That would be a shocker if you were raised the way you were raised.
Totally. And I had always had a fear of it and kind of an aversion to the idea, but
a fear of being a lesbian, or
fear
of
okay, yeah.
So
for a lot of reasons.
Do you feel like somewhere in the back of your mind, maybe you knew all along, or do you consider yourself bisexual or lesbian?
Bisexual.
Bisexual. Okay, so there's something in the back of your mind all along going.
Yeah. Now that I look back, I can definitely tell.
Isn't it funny how just unaware we are sometimes as kids, or and we act out based on this unawareness because our subconscious is actually fully aware, saying, excuse me.
Right.
By the way.
Yeah.
So how did you meet her?
At the gym.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And did you know right away where you're like, uh-oh?
It was one of those weird, almost immediate, like both of us were very drawn to one another. I've, got theories on that too now. I think we were both very similarly wounded, and I think that we recognized that more than anything else. And for a minute at the beginning, or more than a minute at the beginning, it was like we were each other's very best friend and defender, like you'd never had your whole life and always wanted,
Sure.
And it just kept going. So
when your ex-husband found out, at the time your husband found out, was it something that you told him, or did it blow up?
Kind of both. I mean, some of both. I mean, there did finally come a point where I completely came clean, but, you know, for a while
And you were in love with her at that point?
Both of them. Yeah, it was very...
Oh, that's complicated.
It was very sloppy.
Yeah.
And intense.
Was she bisexual as well, or not?
Apparently.
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, I don't
Now,
think...
here's a question. This is, like, totally out there,
Yeah.
but did you ever contemplate the idea of the three of you being together, since you were in love with both of them?
She was married too, yeah.
Oh, she was married too.
Yeah,
Wow, it gets so much more complicated.
I know, right? I know.
Life
But yeah,
is
sure.
complicated.
It did. And so now at this point in time, now that we're here, wow, this is totally not the topic we started on.
That's
but
okay.
I mean,
it's the way conversation goes.
Right.
So.
I mean, conceptually, I am open to the idea of polyamory, which is, you know, where you have multiple partners, but it's like it's a committed situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only way that those situations work is if you have really well-adjusted people who are honest about who they are.
Yeah, I think honesty is very important.
It has to be.
It is regardless, but
with any relationship.
Sure.
But especially if you've got more than one partner, you know, everybody has to be like okay.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I mean, conceptually, like that's nothing I've ever tried, but I mean, you know, I think of it as being pretty natural and
biologically, it makes complete sense, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And intellectually, but yeah. I think it's hard to practice, but
yeah, because our egos get in the way. Makes sense. Absolutely.
But yeah, but I'm looking for something that's just honest and open. I don't ever want to be a cheater again. You know, it's not a pleasant thing. It wasn't a pleasant thing, and
but it was a learning
hurtful
experience.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think I could have not done it. Obviously, you know.
Did he now? Do you still communicate with him?
It's been years. I kind of backed off because I just felt like he needed to be able to move on. You know what I mean?
Do you think it would have made a difference if you had an affair with a man versus a woman?
Yeah, totally.
Do you think he would have accepted it more?
Oh, no. I think it would have been
worse.
Oh,
really?
I do.
Interesting.
And I don't know that I would have cheated with a man, and if I had, I think it would have been like 15 years down the line. I would have been trying really hard with him.
Yeah.
I was kind of blindsided by her. Like I had never kissed a woman or, you know, allowed myself to think that, you know, sexual ideas about a woman. I had never even gone there. And it just kind of sprung up naturally when I met her. So.
If you hadn't been raised in the environment, I may have already just asked you this, but now I can't remember. If you hadn't been raised in the environment, do you think that would have sprung up earlier?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know if, you know, sometimes I think that the repression of a situation, it's like Rumspringa. Once you're free of it, then suddenly the world is your oyster. Pardon the pun.
Funny. Too funny. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I ever like totally lost my head. That's another weird thing. I was grateful for some of the indoctrination because I think it spared me some things that a lot of people go through. Like you know, where you, I don't know, all of the drunken shenanigans that you have where you're like, I don't know, endangering yourself because you're drunk in public or whatever and not able to really get around and
because you're not a drinker at all, right?
No, that's not true.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh,
and I've actually, I've been challenged by sobriety.
Oh, okay.
Really
are you sober now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sober at this moment.
I guess for sure. Are you sober currently?
I am not. I am not in AA or anything like that.
Okay.
No.
Have you been in AA?
I mean, I've attended a meeting, I guess, and I have been in counseling for issues relating to leaning on substances. You know?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
I've struggled with reality for sure.
God, who doesn't? Tell me one person that doesn't struggle with reality.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I have also desired to escape most of my life, you know.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Often I do it through imagination, but once I started drinking and discovering recreational drugs and stuff, I mean, I guess that would be, I did have a little bit of a Rumspringa moment with those, with substances, because I am much more comfortable existing in the ether than I am in my body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was almost like escaping from my body to do those things.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you break it off with your ex-husband. You're now.
Well, he broke it off.
He broke it off with you. Sorry, and
No,
then you were dating the woman. And how long did you date her for?
Our whole deal was about 13 years.
That's
altogether.
very long. You are a very committed person.
I am.
You
I don't
stay
go
in there.
lightly. I don't go lightly.
And you're not
in
together
things.
anymore.
No.
And you broke up on that one.
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
And for more soul searching, or
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of things. A lot of things. A lot of lessons that I had to learn the hard way, I guess. I would say that relationship taught me that I was worth love. And I had kind of rejected that notion and had to go through a lot of hard things to finally decide, you know what, you are worthy of love and you don't have to go without it anymore. So
self-love.
Self-love, yeah.
Is that what you're working on now?
Oh, yeah.
It's the hardest one.
And stability, you know. It is the hardest one.
It really is the hardest one.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yep.
How's it all feeling at this point?
I'm good. I am about to hit a year mark on that breakup, like this month, at the end of this month. And it has been a deeply challenging year, but a deeply introspective year and a deeply triumphant year in a lot of ways.
What are some of the things you've learned about yourself?
Oof. Well, as you alluded to some point, like I did have some childhood trauma, and it was pretty intense, and to the point that I had, like a lot of people, just completely forgotten it, just blotted it out. This year I have done a lot of unearthing, and not even so much what happened to me, what my specific trauma was, although that is also coming back with everything, but it was more how I responded. I became just a very damaging child. You know, I was in deep distress, and if I were to loosely talk about this, I would say that an adult authority figure was my abuser, and it was discovered by a family member who put it to stop, but didn't take any police action on it, partly because of the time that it was, like the early 80s, late 70s, just, a lot of white male privilege, you know what I mean?
And kids are still considered, as they are still in some ways today, still considered property, I think. I'm not even sure when the turning point happened, but it certainly... Yeah.
So that situation stopped, but I didn't get counseling or anything like that because of our church, which didn't believe in counseling. Thought it was like an instrument of the devil, and
really,
seriously, yes.
Do you think,
just terribly afraid of it?
Just to offshoot on that for a second, do you? And I know we can't speak to all religions, nor or all doctrine, all that stuff. But do you think that part of the reason why, when something like that is unearthed and brought up and shown, the light shown on it, do you think that the reason why it gets shuffled off to Buffalo again is because perhaps it is so prevalent that if they shine the light on one spot, they're going to have to break the whole damn building down. Show,
like the Catholic priests deal. Yeah.
Some Catholic priests.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Yeah. I mean, I think, I definitely think that's part of it, but I think more than anything, it is shame. It is shame.
Shame for the adults as well.
Yeah. And just for the failure, the spiritual standard is so high, and there's not many things worse or deemed worse than child molestation, right? So it
is quite bad, yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So just the shame around it, just nobody wanted to talk about it. Everybody just wanted to kind of act like it didn't happen and pray that it just kind of went away. If you make it stop, then that's good enough. And I think they actually prayed for me to forget it, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense.
And that was not the answer.
Well, I mean, as you brought up the Catholic priests, they shuffled them off into other, which was what is the worst thing you can do is, instead of bringing someone to justice, you send them off to another parish where they'll just do it again.
Or what about, I mean, this is such a hot topic right now, too, with Brock Turner and all of that. And you know, with rape cases in general, like Roger Ailes being dismissed, but with a multi-million-dollar severance package and, you know, no real consequences except for his, you know, barely tarnished name, you know. I mean, so there's a lot of anger about this. I mean, I can get really angry about it. I can get really angry at my abuser. Now, if I'm honest, I have to admit that I know enough about that abuser that they were abused. You know, so
doesn't excuse it.
It doesn't excuse it. But if we want this to end, how do we make it end? We don't just throw people in jail. Like, we have to deal with trauma. We have to give people counseling. Like, maybe you go to prison, but you also get counseling while you're in there. You know, and just like the war on drugs, like 30-year sentences, I mean,
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I don't even think that 30-year sentences are appropriate for rape necessarily. It depends on if it's violent and whatever. I don't know. This is, I know
that's a hot topic.
I'm walking some lines right here.
Okay. You know what? Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I personally think that rapists do worse than murderers, in my personal opinion.
No, I feel you.
I feel like a rapist should go to jail for longer than a murderer, and for certainly get massive amounts of counseling for certain. And I agree that most people that commit those crimes, not all, because some are just
deviant,
just off.
Yeah.
But for many, especially when it comes to victims against children, they too were victimized.
Right.
And without the proper therapy and you know, the cycle continues and continues.
Exactly.
And continues.
And that's the thing
it's clear that that's the case. It's clear that that's the way it is.
Right. And that's what I want to confront. And like, how do we have, the only way to confront it is for people to get honest about their story and to share them, you know.
Sure.
And the shame, like, okay, so I was saying before, what I had unearthed more than just the actual trauma of myself was how I reacted. And I was heartbroken. So this is the, can I call
You can swear all you want. Damn it.
This is the fucked up thing about it.
Yeah.
Is, you know, sex is bonding.
Sure.
So I bonded to my rapist.
Right.
And fell in love.
Right.
And that's horrifying, you know.
I think that happens.
So when the relationship
I know that happens.
ended,
You just said it does.
Yeah. I mean, it's like biological. It's like a hardwired thing.
It is
that
biological.
happens,
yeah.
You know.
There's actually a chemical reaction that happens that makes that happen.
And if you believe in energy bodies, that stuff all mixes and melts too. So yeah, I mean, it's highly violating. These are the reasons why it's so traumatic and violating. It's because it's not just your body, it's your psyche, it's your spirit, it's your person that gets assaulted. Like, your free will has been assaulted, and that's the real injury, I think. And So I was heartbroken and a child, and and I didn't even know what the hell had happened. So I did replicate behavior for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm really putting it out here. I'm trying to write this into a blog right now anyway. So, but
you're an exceptional writer, by the way.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank
really.
you.
Very, very excellent.
I appreciate that. Can I plug the blog?
I would love you to plug the blog, and I'll put a link on the website too for it. But please plug away.
Thank you. It's called bloodlesscoupblog.com.
Spell that, because not everyone can spell coup.
The coup is COUP.
So bloodless, BLOODLESS, coup, COUP. Blog.com.
Yes.
And I'll have a link on the HeyHumanPodcast.com.
And the ethos behind that is, I'm looking for a bloodless overthrow of the ruling regime right now. Like we need an overthrow of operating system of ideas in this world.
The regime in your head and the regime outside of your head, right?
And I think that they're a reflection, aren't they? It's like, now we can get all really full of stuff going that way.
So when you met your ex-husband, and you had this trauma, and you had this bonding experience, and developed a loving relationship toward your abuser, now how does that...
Of course, that when it ended, that got sublimated. But anyway, go ahead.
What do you mean by that?
When that relationship was stopped, my awareness of it, I buried the whole thing. I don't know what to say.
Okay.
But it was still there,
Yeah, it was still part of you.
Sorry,
so
I interrupted you.
No, you did. Totally fine. I think I've probably interrupted you at least 6 times.
Okay.
So when you entered into this sexual relationship with the man who would become your husband, did any of the ghosts start to rear their heads?
Somewhat, yeah. it's a both and kind of thing. He made a few comments a time or two that indicated that, you know, he was aware more than I was that something had happened. You know, he tried to talk to me about it a couple of times, and I don't think I was able to hear it at the time. But I remember that now, you know. So yes. But in a lot of ways, for me, it was almost an act of defiance. You know, it was like me choosing to allow myself, and because I had sublimated what had happened. I don't even know. It's I had compartmentalized myself. Now, since the trauma has resurfaced, and I've been remembering that I did have like a whole upset in my sexuality again. You know what I mean? Because real ghosts of like, oh God, you know, like, oh, it doesn't feel good because I'm having a bodily flashback. You know, that kind of thing, which I did not experience with him because it was still sublimated, and I was kind of, I think, healing with him, like claiming myself where I hadn't before, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge later as I've begun remembering to...
Do you have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Sometimes. I mean, I did have a counselor diagnose me with that. I will say that I am highly triggerable. Like, I have very high defense mechanisms. And I have... If not necessarily, I've lost some friends and I have distanced some friends by some of my coping mechanisms that are, you know, where I recognize now that my radar is maybe a little too high, and that like I cut things off at a point where I don't have to, but I you know,
out of self-preservation. Yeah,
if I got triggered or tripped, I'm just like, we're done, and I don't, you know, I just pull back right like that. So I'm trying to work on things like that. But,
sure.
And, you know...
Still quite understandable. I mean, cut yourself some slack there.
And I've always lifted weights, too. And
yeah, you're buff, girl.
But I recognize that as a defense mechanism, you know? And it has, like... I mean, some men have been attracted to it, but fewer men are attracted to it than are frightened by it, believe it or not.
Well, it's interesting because I think that many survivors of abuse, they go one way or the other. They either get super into... fitness and run themselves to the ground or work out themselves to the ground, or they eat and eat and eat, and that becomes their shell, their protective shell.
Absolutely.
You know, so they're either, you know, control, anorexia, bulimia, that's a control.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what to call it, a disease.
Right.
I'm not sure. I mean,
disorder?
Disorder? Yeah, maybe that's... Even that comes with such baggage.
It does. Everything
it's so
does.
Hard to name anything without making it sound so judgy. But I heard the most interesting podcast the other day. This professor, he's where was he from? He was Lebanese, or he is Lebanese. He still is. He was last week. He's still Lebanese. Gad is his name. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And he was actually talking about anorexia nervosa, and he spoke about how, you know, that's a disease of someone trying to control, right? They're trying to control their weight, but it's way deeper than their weight. And he said that it actually goes all the way into controlling their reproductive system. Oh, wow. It's and sometimes it's triggered by sexual abuse, and people will then become anorexic because it shuts down the reproductive system. Wow. And it's like the subconscious desire to not procreate with your family members, or I was like, oh my god, my mind is blown right now. So I was like, I have to go down that rabbit hole and research that, because I found it so fascinating. For sure. It makes complete and total sense.
I will say this, that I have been completely insane about not becoming pregnant, you know, and the one of the most unhinged moments of my life.
Is that why you're wearing a garbage bag right now?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
That, and it looks so good. No. Yeah, but I was terrified of pregnancy. And
why is that?
I think that I was afraid that I would abuse my kids, you know.
Oh, honestly. Yeah, I feel you. Totally understand that.
And I mean, I was sublimated, so I wasn't aware of why. I just knew I had a deep terror. And I also was not, like, I couldn't babysit kids. My mom tried to get me babysitting jobs, and I remember the night of, just like the hour before canceling, because I just couldn't, like,
But you didn't know why.
I didn't know why.
I find that fascinating and beautiful in its own way, that your mind somewhere, your subconscious, and I don't think you would have abused those children, but I'm saying that
Okay,
I think...
let me go here.
Oh, okay.
I did have a moment of confrontation with consequences. And without that moment, okay, so when I was a kid, I think I acted out with several kids, and I don't even know all of them, you know, this is the hard part, like, I don't know who I've hurt, and, again, I'm about to write this, so I may as well just say it out loud, but, you know.
This is going to come out after you write
okay.
it. So,
okay,
yeah.
That's cool either way, but, this is really hard.
It's
this
only
is hard
what
for
you're
me
comfortable with.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm offering this because I feel like probably a lot of people feel this way. Going back to shame and why we don't talk about these things, I think we're worried about what we are, you know, like as angry as I can be at rapists, the truth is, at some level, I am someone else's rapist, you know. We were children. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
And that's kind of the only thing that's saving me. It's a little bit of a technicality. But there are 2 children that I can think of that I was just doing behaviors that I had learned. And I was also wrecked and knew it and angry. And I did have a desire to wreck. I really didn't know what was happening.
How old were you then?
I mean, like 8, 9. This incident where I was confronted, I was 12. So I'm almost prosecutable, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's getting there.
Yeah.
Now, so was my victim, the same age. So you could, you know, but it happened at a camp, of all cliche things.
And they were not were not in it with you.
Yeah,
because I mean, kids experiment.
And I don't even remember. Yeah, like, and I don't even remember if we like actually got anywhere, or if I was just kind of grooming and like offering, and they were just like no, and that was enough to make them run, or if I actually crossed any boundaries. I don't remember. I haven't allowed myself to remember that yet. But and it was a girl, and she went and told like the camp nurse, I think, who came to confront me and thought I was older than I was, and was like, she's like, what you're doing is called rape. And I was just horrified, you know. I was horrified because I had no idea.
Was that the first time you'd heard that word?
No, and here's the weird thing. So have you ever heard of Focus on the Family? James Dobson and all of this.
I feel like I have.
That's a very fundamentalist thing. Like, he's written
Is that
books.
The one where
He's a Christian
psychologist. You should beat your child. Is it that guy?
Oh yeah.
I've heard of this guy.
Yeah.
They consider it ordained by God to beat the crap out of their child. Yeah, I remember reading about him.
So all kinds of things, but yeah, he was obsessed with rape, and so his talk show would be on in my house because, you know, sex was scandalous anyway, so it was, you know,
good selling point.
Yeah, I mean, rape was ridiculously talked about on Christian radio as just like one of the dangers of being in the world, and I was terrified as a kid of being raped, and I didn't realize that I already had been, and that I was doing it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I was aware of the word, and I was terrified of it. I was terrified that it was going to happen to me, and then I get told that that's what I'm doing, and
it's a mind fuck.
That is what made me, like, I literally shut myself down. Like, when she quit talking to me, and I was defiant. Like, I was like, oh, so you seem pretty upset. You must have been raped, huh? For you to be this upset. Like, I was
to the
camp nurse
telling
me that. Like, I fought hard, you know. But then I fell apart. Like, as soon as that confrontation was over, like, I was just a mess, you know. And I neutered myself. Like, I was just like, I don't understand sexuality. It's too big for me. And then I just kind of like dove into the fundamentalism and was like, okay, I'm just going to be a virgin until I'm married, and I'm not even going to investigate. And I didn't.
Did you masturbate?
Not until I was 21.
Whoa.
I just shut it down because I was mortified.
I understand. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's really traumatic. And I didn't lose my virginity till 25.
Now, I think I was 18. So, I mean, you know, that's not so unheard of to
technical virginity. That I chose.
That you chose.
Yeah,
totally. As an adult now, do you think, are you still scared to have children?
Oh, yeah. I've given it up.
You have?
Yeah, even though, like, now I don't think that I don't feel like I'm a danger anymore because it's not sublimated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
there's not a shadow side that's hiding your shadow.
Right.
You have to know your freaking shadow, man.
You do, or it will run your life.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm 42, about to be 43. And
you look fantastic.
Thank you.
I think I thought you were about 30, honestly.
Good.
Yeah.
Love it. But yeah, I just
like
feel like...
living. Not working out.
I would call it, I don't know what, like a stunted...
So no alcohol, probably.
No, I have drunk ridiculous amounts of alcohol.
I mean, in the last year. Oh, it's in the last year?
Last year was actually, the last year has been a very good year, but prior to that...
I think you've been sober for a while now.
Sober, I said I'm sober right now. Like, I'm not a teetotaler.
You're not?
I do drink, and I do indulge in things, but I don't drink every day like I used to, and
I understand.
all of those kind of things. And I don't drink to excess every time I drink, which I used to. So.
Okay, I got it. So, going back to religion, let's pop back over there.
Okay.
And by the way, I really appreciate your honesty. It's really, and there's people that listen that they're either gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's me on this side, or they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's me on that side, and that's humongous.
Well, it's terrifying.
I know.
Like I can't tell you how much of my life has been.
I'm sure.
Well, thanks. Has been overshadowed by that fear that, like, I didn't even get on social media for years and years, and I didn't totally know why, other than that it scared me, and this is why. Because somebody out there knew my story that I was trying to deny ever happened, and I was afraid of it coming back, like of someone surfacing and saying, oh, I remember you. Which they may well now, but at least I will be like, I am so sorry, and thank you for telling, and like, is there anything I can do? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about it because I want the cycle to stop, and this is my story of it, and
it is interesting too. You think about, like, I remember a boy named Danny when I was, I must have been like 7 or 8, and we would go into my closet at my parents' house and play quote-unquote hypnotist, and we would take turns hypnotizing each other, and once we were hypnotized, we could do whatever we wanted.
Whoa.
And I mean, I think it was just sort of touchy-feely games of, you're a boy, I'm a girl, that's interesting,
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, it is interesting to think about where is the line. At that age, consent is a very confusing thing, and
glad you said that. So that's another thing that has to change in this country, is like, and it's starting to happen, like, conversation about consent is finally really happening.
Sure.
And it needs to continue, but we need to get rid of abstinence-based sex education in our schools. We need to get real with sex education and start in grade school, in kindergarten, teaching bodily autonomy, and, if you don't want to hug your uncle, you don't have to hug your uncle.
I think that is humongous. I've talked
like
about that on other podcasts. You should not be forced to have an any kind of intimate contact with somebody that you don't want to. Your uncle, your grandma, grandpa who kisses and slobbers your face.
Right.
Weird uncle, whatever. And by the way, we were talking a bit about the Brock case. I was reading this other article that was all about men who are raped. And of course, in our culture, we're like, men can't get raped. That's ridiculous. But absolutely they can. And there was this whole...
by women, too.
By women, absolutely by
Not
women.
just other men.
And by their mothers, and by their lovers, and by, strangers.
Yes.
And it happens.
It does.
And so that's another part of the voice that needs to be spoken to, because I think when it's sort of like the man abuse, too, the women that beat up their husbands or whatever, or the gay men where there's an abused man, and there's just all this shame, extra shame. Like, it's not just the shame that women get raped or abused, but then there's this extra super duper shame on men because somehow it shouldn't happen to them, because
the toxic masculinity thing biting them in the ass because they weren't uber male enough to beat the guy off.
Or the woman or whatever. It's a messed up deal, man.
Sure is.
But I do agree with you that the whole go kiss your auntie or your uncle, that needs to stop immediately.
I agree.
Because it's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross. And kids, their whole world is mom and dad or mom, dad, siblings. And then you bring this other person in. Maybe it's Uncle Bob who only visits once every 2 years. That's a stranger.
Right.
So on the one hand, you're teaching them, don't go off with strangers. Don't be lured by strangers, whatever.
Unless it's Uncle Bob.
Right. Uncle Bob could be weirder than anybody.
Right.
So, oh my goodness. It's it's maddening. It really is. So back to the religious part. I'm curious. So you said that you started having, I've got something in my eye. You started having an awakening. It's my finger. You started having an awakening, and you thought, okay, first of all, creationism, not so much. Started talking with your friends who were more science minded, and but so where do you feel like you have a doctrine now? Do you feel like you have a way that you a belief system or a lack thereof? Are you atheist? Like where does it all figure in at this point, and why?
Okay. Wow.
That's a big question.
It is.
Yeah, we may need snacks.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I definitely have a belief system. I do believe that there's something bigger than me. I don't know how to talk about it anymore. Like, I'm not comfortable with the word God. I just don't like it. It gives me a rigor. It makes me feel too confined. Sometimes I wonder if whatever is bigger is just like us and just kind of went through this same cycle that we're doing of becoming self-aware and, understanding our motivations and why we do things and blah, blah, blah. And then, transcendence or whatever, enlightenment, hits a place where you're capable of actual relationship. What do I think? Okay, so I went to massage therapy school, and I ran into a lot of Eastern philosophy there, and that really resonated in my spirit as true. So I like a lot of Buddhist ideas. I love energy work, like Reiki or Qigong. There's a whole lot of different modalities, but just essentially the idea that beyond just this physical body that we can see and touch, there is a component to us that is ethereal, but actually, it's the spark that leaves when you die. You know what I mean? Like, if you've ever seen a dead body, I mean,
I have.
It's not animated. Like, you can tell that whatever the spark is not
He
there.
was right before I killed him.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. A little serial killer joke.
All kinds of confessions on this one, huh? Yeah. Okay.
But
Rapists
yes,
and murderers
I have
up
been
in
around
here.
a person when they took their last breath.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It can be, for sure. Yeah. So there's something there, and I'm fascinated with that something, and I'm trying to contact it, like, be bigger than my body, and possess all of my senses, which aren't just, sight and smell and taste and hearing.
Beyond the 6 or the 5.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to pick up all of them. And I think what's my unifying belief? I do believe that love, like, if there is anything that's God, it is love, essentially. Like, love is powerful, and I think it's the only force that can really create change, lasting positive change. I think it's the answer to everything. I know it sounds stupid and simplistic, you know what I mean? But I really believe that. So that brings us back to self-love. Like, you've got to find something that allows you to connect with your own worth, and then learn to love yourself, and then have love to give, and yeah.
Do you find it ironic that you became a massage therapist?
I think it's not unusual. I mean, and it certainly wasn't accidental. I think I was trying to heal up, my wounds. Massage therapy is very intimate.
Yes.
I did not have a comfortable relationship with my body, so it was a means of trying to connect with my body, connect with other people. Like, I think I was drawn to other people who had trauma, even when I didn't totally know what my own was. I saw massage therapy as a vehicle for addressing trauma, and specifically sexual trauma, just because a lot of people who have been sexually traumatized don't like massage therapy because they don't want to be touched, but sometimes it's the opposite too, where the idea of massage therapy is that it is safe, intimate touch, not sexual. Like, I would always tell people if it came up, this is a sensual experience because you are using all of your senses, you are experiencing it, but it's not intended to be sexual, you know.
I think men get confused because sometimes they get erections and they're like, oh,
well,
but I mean, it's,
women too.
Yeah, absolutely,
and,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it is an arena where these issues come up more than they do in the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except that you have sexual harassment in the office and stuff like that. I mean, I guess it's everywhere. But
it's everywhere.
Interestingly enough, I had women come on to me in the massage room too, not just men. And
while you're giving them a massage.
Mm-hmm,
oh, okay.
Mm-hmm, you know.
Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And I had to learn all of these things through being in them. But sometimes it's subtle. Like sometimes someone is just kind of squirming, you know, maybe trying to dislodge the draping or whatever, so that it's an accidental exposure or something. And so I learned that if I see a squirm like that, to address it, you know, like maybe take the sheet and just like tuck right where the squirm is happening to be. Nope, stay right there, you know. Nope. But that if you don't, like if I let my discomfort prevent me from addressing it, it would escalate. Mm-hmm. And then I'd really have a problem. So, and then sometimes it was blatant. Like, you know, if someone just exposes themselves and like, hey, then I'm like, okay, guess what? This session is over and you're going to pay me the full fee and don't come back. You know, you know,
sure.
Yeah. And I mean, try to have a lot of compassion. It's my job in that space to keep it appropriate. I think I failed sometimes through naivety or discomfort, you know, but...
everything's a learning curve.
It is, you know.
You are an exceptional massage therapist, though. Mm-hmm. Very, very good.
Thank you.
I have high standards. Because I like the strong ones, you know? Mm-hmm. That kind where you're sort of almost crying. But in the best possible way.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I mean...
I do deep work. I do.
It's great.
Yeah.
So great.
And but I want it to feel good, too. Like, I don't want it to be just like...
Well, for me...
Like an endurance of pain or anything like that.
For me, it's a very happy little line that, you know, it's just like right on the edge of where it's right starting to hurt is my favorite. I don't know what that says about me,
right?
But that's what it is. And I think massage, like a great massage therapist, not only dislodges the muscles, but helps you to release emotional stuff as well.
Absolutely.
Even if it comes up later. I think that's why it's so wise to drink all the water afterward to like clear out the toxins and all that stuff. But I think it also, water is a great channel for the, you know, your spirit. And your energetic.
You're right.
Yeah. So
that's good.
I like that.
Absolutely.
Where are you now on your journey? Where
on my journey now?
What do you feel like you still? I mean, we're constantly learning. We learn until we drop dead. That's just the way it is.
And if you quit learning, you drop dead sooner. I think.
Yeah. Dead alive.
Right.
Yeah. Who wants to be dead alive?
No, nobody.
Well, some zombies maybe.
Yeah.
But where do you think you? Where's your vibe these days?
Well, my goal, I guess, what I'm chasing right now is writing for sure. Like I'm at a place where I recognize my entire life that's what I wanted to be, and I have done it to the best of my ability my whole life, not with consistency to make it pay me, you know. So that's my goal now, is to make it pay me and to just enjoy it, like just allow myself to be who I am, you know. And I am dedicated to continuing to process my trauma so that I can not be traumatized, you know, and traumatizing. Like I am really trying to own myself right now and be responsible for what I bring to the table in every interaction, you know, which is more aware than I have been ever before, and is a lot sometimes, you know. I don't get it all right, you know, I constantly make mistakes, but I want to be a force of positivity and compassion. Like I want to meet people where they are, and, you know, allow a place for stories like you're doing, you know, and a place for connection and compassion to come in for our failures, you know. I feel like we have to be able to fail even horrifically and still feel that we are deserving of love, and I don't think this world offers that very much. And I think that's why there's so much tragedy out there, you know.
Well, like we were talking about rapists going to jail for longer than murderers. They still, I mean, and I say this all the time, and people get mad at me for saying it, but I'm like, even Hitler, there's somewhere in Hitler that was deserved of love. Was he a horrible human being? Absolutely.
Right.
But something created that horrible human being.
Right.
And if you had gotten to him right before that happened, you know, I mean, some people are just born sociopaths. It's just the way it is. But he was a complicated man.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's a crazy, grace is a crazy thing, you know, and where to find it. And I've read some books by people who are on death row. And, you know, where it's little essays of people who they fully admitted, yes, I've killed someone, and this is what I think about now. And as I'm serving my time, and as I'm either awaiting my execution, or, you know, and some of those guys are on there forever and ever and ever. But I think we forget that these are still human beings. You can say, oh no, they're not, but they are. They are human beings. It's just it's fascinating to me. The human psyche in general is just so fascinating.
I agree.
But we can't lump anything into any one pile.
Right.
Oh.
I feel, going back to Brock again, so the only thing about him is, yes, he's like a young guy. Like, so there's rapists who are like predators, you know, who like that.
Like Dahmers, the Bundys, those guys. Yeah.
And then there's rapists that, and I'm not trying to give anyone an out, but we have created a society that, you know,
we live in a rape culture.
We do.
Where it's absolutely okay to objectify women. And I'll be the first to say, in a sexual relationship, I want to be objectified sometimes in a healthy way. Like because I'm okay with it, you know.
Sure.
But I don't think a woman who is drunk and passed out deserves to be, you know, fingered.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And who's to say that guy Brock, or any Brock out there, if he got away with that, would he get a taste of it? I mean,
I think so.
The little bit of that, you know, dopamine gets released, and then suddenly you have the chance that it's starting to set you up as an addiction, to that feeling.
Do you think that human nature? If we get away with it, we tend to do more of it, for sure. Yeah. So yes, I want us to build a world where we don't get away with it, like where we acknowledge that it exists, and we're like, okay, why and how do we stop it? You know, like we have to start educating kids young, and you know, before they even get to college and fraternities, where you know, where it's just like part of the social, you know, landscape, and everybody accepts it as normal life. Well, it's not, and
it's not.
You know, so
if I picked out, say, 10 of my girlfriends I could think of, I would say 6 or 7 of them have either been molested, raped by either family members or
friends,
boyfriends or friends. One by a stranger, but. You know, that number that's a humongous number. Huge. I myself got roofied at a party when I was dating. I just started dating this guy. We went to a Halloween party. And it was very bizarre because we were getting ready for the Halloween party, getting dressed. And I said to him, I should bring my flask. I feel like this is the kind of party you should be drinking your own alcohol. And he's like, oh, no, it's fine. It was a big, huge party. Like 1,500 people at this big warehouse.
In your gut, man.
My gut.
You should have gone with your gut.
And as we were walking up the stairs into this warehouse, into this party, I joked with him. I said, this is the kind of party you get roofied at, isn't it? And he's like, oh, ha. And we like joked about it. Because it's like, oh, ha, ha, what are the chances of that? Well, I'll be damned. I got roofied at that party. He and I separated to go, you know, be with friends or whatever, because we had friends there.
Sure.
And somebody, one of the place was set up with all these individual bars. It was a big fundraiser and all this stuff. And I like tequila. I went to the little tequila bar, and I had gone up a couple times, and everything was fine. And then the third time I went up to get my shot of tequila, I remember, the last thing I remember was the guy that I had been dealing with handed my shot glass to another guy, and then he handed it to me, which is weird, right?
It is.
The next thing I remember is I don't remember. And apparently my ex found me in a pile of clothes, like petting the clothes, like the coats.
Yeah.
And some of my friends earlier had thought that he had drugged me, and they were freaking out, and then they couldn't find me because I was petting people and acting really weird. And when I was, so my boyfriend at the time got me out of there, drove me home. He thought I had drank a billion tequilas. We hadn't been dating that long, so he didn't know that I'm not a crazy drinker.
Sure.
And so apparently I threw up a lot on the way home out the window. And he said I was like a rolled up carpet trying to pull me into the house.
Wow.
And I basically just passed out on the kitchen floor. He couldn't get me to move.
Wow.
And the next day he's like, I can't believe you got that drunk. So embarrassed. I'm like, I think I was roofied. Like, I had 3 shots of tequila. It's nothing. And I was so dizzy and all this stuff. And so we looked up on the internet what the after effects of being roofied, and it was spot on.
What were you?
Now, of course, he still didn't believe me, so I challenged him about a month later to a tequila drinking contest, which I won. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is I got roofied. And once in college, one of my roommates, her boyfriend was cheating on her, and I found out, and he was a jerk anyway. And I told her, and I came home from school, and this is a roommate situation where I had 5 female roommates in one little house, Came home from school, and he was there, and nobody else was. And he just started yelling. He's like, what are you doing? What are you saying all this stuff to her? And she doesn't believe you anyway, and I'm going to teach you a lesson. And he shoved me into the bathroom, and he pushed me so hard, I went flying into to the showery part, ripped down my, my tailbone hit the faucet, ripped that, and I was like, oh my God. And then he was like, I'm going to teach you a lesson. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's going to rape me.
Sure.
And I'm 6'1", first of all.
Right.
So at the time I was 6 foot. I grew a little bit after college. And I was like, if I don't get out of here, I'm screwed, literally. And and he was a big dude. He was like 6'3", and I was scrappy dude. I mean, I'm still pretty scrappy dude, but I was a real scrappy dude then. And I jumped up, and I just made myself as big as I could, and I just mowed into him and ran
Good girl.
out the house.
Yeah.
If I hadn't done that, and many women don't, I mean, I'm big.
Right.
Like, many little people, probably he would have been able to overpower.
I don't think of you as big, by the way.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I get worked up just talking about it, and it's just...
I love that you said I made myself big. See, that's you tapping into your energy body.
Yeah.
And I believe if you can possess that you can literally I would love to be able to just push people away without even touching them.
Man.
Like some martial artists.
Blew past.
Yeah.
I did. It's like I just imagined myself puffing up like a big...
Like, this is not happening.
Yeah, and what's sad is, so there were 2 experiences where something terrible could have happened if the guy that had given me that drug had found me in that pile. God knows where I would have ended up.
No doubt.
And how many women at that party ended up that way if I
Right.
hadn't gone with my boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't believe me.
Yeah.
That's also part of the culture.
Yes, it is.
Always.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, and here's the crazy thing, when I told my roommate what had happened, she didn't believe me. And she didn't break up with the guy. He never came over the house. Like, she always went to meet him, but isn't that crazy?
It is.
I mean, I had scar.
People believe what they want to believe.
Oh, I know. She was
terrible.
really super religious too. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
Probably.
she was super religious.
Wow.
But the point being is that it is so freaking prevalent.
It is. It really is.
Unbelievable.
I honestly believe that everybody on the planet has
had something.
Yeah, something.
Probably.
Like something that they don't feel good about.
Probably.
I think every single person on the planet does.
It would not surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me.
And so I think that's what makes it such a volatile topic, and I think everyone has some secret fear of, guilt in the equation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
One that we really have to talk about and... Yeah.
And you talk about this stuff on your blog? Is that kind of one of your... So it's bloodlesscoupblog.com.
Yeah. I mean, this past year, whatever I've put out there has been kind of me kind of processing, walking away from my religion and how much I felt traumatized by its overbearing nature and yeah, like trying to come to grips with with what happened to me. And like I wrote one short story on there that's kind of a revenge fantasy, but you know, it ends as kind of just a healing, you know, like allowing myself the anger, but choosing to let it go rather than actually seek vengeance or whatever, you know. But I do feel like it's really important to feel the emotions. Like I've had to allow myself to feel emotions that I blocked out from the time of the trauma.
Sure.
And that, I think that's what we're avoiding more than anything else, is like actually feeling, because it feels terrible.
And
you don't want to remember
100%
it. You know, you don't want to relive it. It's like reliving it.
Yes.
But you almost have to, because otherwise...
Therapy is hard as hell. But my God, getting it out is the best.
It is. Yeah. And otherwise you're just holding that vibration. It's still in there. You have to like let it get out.
Do you think if you hadn't had the trauma, you would have stayed in the religion? Do you ever think about that? Is there any kind of correlation, you think?
Interesting. I'm not sure. I think I was always intellectually restless. So I would have challenged, but honestly, more than anything, it was like my loyalty to my mom, which may have been tied up in the abuse. You know what I mean? Like that may be part of it. I don't know if I can even answer that question.
How old were you when the abuse started?
Again, I can't totally say, but my guess is young, like 3, 4, something, and maybe stopped 7, 8.
Okay.
And I don't know the regularity of occurrences or anything like that, you know.
Sure.
All I know is that sometimes I would, like lately this year, I've had a couple of moments where I just would be crying and I would know that it was from the past. And if I just allowed that crying to come, then a whole bunch of information comes with it.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of moments like that this year. And I don't avoid it anymore. I don't try to drink my way out of it. You know what I mean? Like I allow it to come.
You feel it. That's very brave.
Well,
that's exceptionally brave. Good for you.
Well, thanks. But I've been a crazy person, you know, and I don't want to be a crazy person because I keep blowing up my life, and I don't want to. You know, I want to build and keep it.
Was your abuser highly religious?
Yes.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing we survive our lives.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. It's going to make you an exceptional writer. So
I hope so.
You already are one. So
I appreciate the vote.
I hate to say that the traumas lead one to a creative path that is exceptional, but it seems to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think...
the darkness.
Right. I don't know that you have to have darkness, but if you have it, you definitely have to deal with it. And dealing with it, I do think, allows you the opportunity to be exceptional in your expression of it or whatever.
It goes from being written on your bones to being written on a page.
I like that. Yeah. Wow. That's very well said. Nice.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Shoot.
Is it a show? I don't know.
It is a show. It's a show. It's your show.
On the podcast. It's my show.
It is. Thank you so much for asking me and for having me.
And I'm going to put links to your information that people, want to check out when they're going to want to check out your blog. I'm sure of that. So, and
hopefully they don't send hate mail for anything I said. I don't know.
If you have hate mail, you can send it to me. I'll deal with you.
Don't do that either.
You know what? There's always haters.
I know.
There's going to be haters no matter what.
I know.
The minute you said, I don't want to be in this religion anymore, you got some haters. So, we're going to live our lives, and that's all we can do. And God bless. I mean, not to be ironic, but amen and all that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I gotcha.
All right.